The purpose of this video is going to be not only to convince you to exercise, but also that walking is the best exercise you can do. This is going to be the first video in a series that I would like to create on the topic of walking for exercise. I'd like to start this video with a series of anecdotes that turned me on to walking in the first place. When I was in high school, I had a teacher who would constantly tell the class about this one guy who lived in her neighborhood that was a quote-unquote power walker. And for anyone who doesn't know what that is, that's someone who basically just speed walks with, the typical jogging gear like water bottles and, running shoes and all that stuff. And she told us about how he was in really good shape and all that. And of course, being young and foolish, the first thing I thought was, oh, come on, that's not exercise. Exercise is jogging or playing like ball hockey or something. And, so that didn't stick. Some years later, I listened to a news special that talked about a study where they put a handful of out of shape or overweight people on a walking program where they had to walk for, X amount of steps a day, which, really equated to like maybe 2 hours or something of walking. And in the conclusion of the study, they found that the participants had made major improvements to their health, including blood pressure and all that stuff. But, still, I was stubborn. It didn't stick. Last thing that I can remember that, that made me think about walking as exercise was there used to be, well, for that matter, probably still is, this older guy in my neighborhood who walks by, and he walks long distances. I mean, I've seen him at various places on the same street walking, and, he's walking every day, and he is very thin, and he's like very energetic looking. He has a bounce in his step, despite the fact that he's, got to be like 70, 75 years old, and he's got a full beard and everything, but he's skinny as a whip. And, that really impressed me. And I'm sure that if he were waking up every morning and just, reading the newspaper and eating McDonald's or whatever, not that there's anything really horrible about McDonald's, but, he probably would be severely overweight. Maybe he would be dead right now. It sounds morbid, but, it's realistic. So, my real first experience with how walking could change your life was when I got a job at a grocery store. Now, this grocery store was in a place where I could get to it with transit, but the problem was that my shift started so early that transit wasn't running. So I was forced to walk to the job, which was about a 50-minute walk, and that was fine in the summertime. But eventually it became winter, and there are no snowplows at 5 a.m. So I had to trudge through sometimes 30 centimeters of snow just to get to the job. And then, I had to work like a 4 or 5 hour shift where I wasn't able to stand still while I was working. It was always go get this, go move that, etc. So after 2 seasons of walking, in difficult conditions and staying on my feet all day, my leg muscles had gotten very strong, especially the parts that are involved in walking. And I didn't really notice that. I didn't even feel like I was doing exercise. But then the next summer, when I got the bike out of storage, I decided, oh, thank goodness, I don't have to walk anymore. I can ride my bike. So I grabbed my bike, rode it to the dollar store, and when I jumped back on, I just felt really tired. Like, I felt like it was a labor to pedal the bike because the muscles that I was using to ride my bike were, pretty much atrophied from not riding for a long time. and the muscles that I use for walking were extremely strong and fit. So I jumped off the bike and I just walked the bike home, and it felt better. I felt so much better just walking the bike home because it was absolutely no difficulty at all to walk. And I'm sure that looked a little bit strange, somebody walking their bike home, perfectly good bike, but they're just walking it, not riding it. But it felt so much better that I didn't care. I didn't appreciate being in such good shape because I did lose a lot of weight during that season. And I was very in shape. There are times when I had to go across to the variety store that I have here, and rather than walk to the variety store, whatever, just jog over because, I was thin, energetic, bouncing. I jogged everywhere if it was a short distance. There was no reason to walk. But then, you know what? I moved to a different job, went to school, and what happens is, you adopt that sedentary lifestyle again, and the weight comes back, your muscles atrophy. And at that point, I realized what I'd lost, but it was too late. I'll continue the rest of this in part 2.